Em 5 segundos, mais uma transmissão de conhecimento do Centro Universitário Internacional Uninter.
Olá a todas e todos, é grande prazer estar
Hello,
com
everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. This last 2025 Talking Business, Entrepreneurship Without Borders, that focus in how to turn ideas into global businesses. I'm really happy to be here with two great friends of mine, Michel Levy and Alberto Jr. We are going to have a very informal but informational conversation. So I'm going to start with a quick opening. Of course, their CV is a lot better than what I'm going to tell you, but you're going to be hearing that from them. After a brief opening, we are going to speak English with Michelle, who lives in New York for a long time, and then with Alberto in two one-on-one conversation. After that, we're going to have a second block where all of you should take the opportunity to ask questions to two experienced people who had a journey and experience as entrepreneurs. Michelle is Brazilian, who studied economics at USP, and she worked for international investment bank in Brazil and New York. Then she transitioned to be the founder and leader of a Brazilian brand that she helped to turn into a global brand. So we're going to hear about her background and Alberto, who decided to study computer science in Brazil at USP as well. And after a short time working as a trainee or as an intern at Harvard, he helped me a lot at this time of his life. He then became an entrepreneur as a CTO of Profis company. You're going to be hearing a little bit more about his journey. But what I find very interesting to have different success stories. We can have an international experience without leaving the country, or at the same time, you can have this experience leaving the country. She understands a lot about the technology and business interface, starting with the business side, like studying and working in the field. And Alberto, the opposite. He went deep into technology with the technical knowledge, and with his venture, he had managed to grow a lot. So just to remind you that this event is being broadcasted in Portuguese at its main channel, and it's being broadcasted in English in our Global Hub channel, in Uninter Group in Portuguese and Global Hub in English. So you can switch back and forth depending on your interest. Of course, we have simultaneous translation throughout the event. This is the last Talking Business this year. We're going to have more events in 2026. Your participation is very important. So take the opportunity to ask questions. You can ask questions at any time. And during the second block, I'm going to get these questions and ask the questions to our panelists. You don't need to write down more than once, because you're going to go back to this question. Don't worry.
Be with you. Love learning from you. And let's just start off with a little bit of your history, because I obviously did not give a great amount of detail. You graduated, as I mentioned, with a degree in economics from the FEA USP, and then worked in Brazil, and after that in the US at JP Morgan, a global investment bank. First question is just, what were the most important doubts and decisions and the trade-offs that you faced during that early professional period of your life, and how did you choose how to navigate them?
First of all, thank you, Jason, for having me. I just want to prove que eu sou brasileira, apesar da aparência do nome e do sotaque. Eu sou de Blumenau, mas cresci em
Prove
São
that I'm
Paulo.
Brazilian despite my appearance, I'm Brazilian, so.
Listen,
Always.
no, when you go to university, to college in Brazil, very few people know what they want to be when they grow up. You have to make a decision very early, unless you have a passion. And I'm so looking forward to listening to Alberto's story. But unless you have a passion, which I didn't have, you got to focus on being curious. I didn't want to be specialized in absolutely anything. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I like mathematics. I had some basics. I like math. I like world events. I always liked world events. So I was like, okay, economics sounds interesting enough. Economia. So it's world, it's math. I can do a little bit of both. So that was my decision, of trying to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. I'm still asking that question, for the record. So just to be very clear, I'm still on that journey. And the choice of a job, for me, I wanted to learn. I think my biggest quality is being curious. I'm not afraid to be curious, because when you're curious, you can be dumb. You don't have to be very smart to be curious. You can just ask questions. I can sit down with Alberto and have a conversation with him for 20 minutes. And if I ask all these questions about technology, he's not going to think I'm not smart. He just thinks I don't know technology, right? So for me, it was about exploring. It was about learning. And since I had to be good at something to get the job, right? So I had to do all this math tests, this finance tests, and I passed. And I knew that job for me, it was a trade-off that I was starting to look at my life outside Brazil, but it was also an advantage because I wanted to try. I was curious about trying that life outside Brazil, but the doubts were many. We all Brazilians, we all grew up in Brazil. We have our network, we have our friends, we have our contacts, we have our relationships. When you leave Brazil, you start from zero. And I can talk more about that later. But that is a huge trade-off. You become nobody overnight. And you probably know that very well yourself, Jason, having moved to Brazil and not knowing anybody when you got to Brazil, leaving your family, your contacts, and your network behind. But those are all choices you need to make.
Great, but well, I would absolutely agree. There's a plus side and definitely a negative side. You eat what we call in English humble pie, right? You are up at the top and then you come down to the bottom. I think that's a great message that Michele's given, because in your career, right, you're going to take some hits. And it's not just when you change countries. Sometimes it's when you change companies. Sometimes it's when you you lose a job. Sometimes it's when you don't have a great time in a project. So I think that's a really important point that she made. So after you had success and you moved to New York, and I imagine you were you had established yourself with a first job and at a bank, and that's a well-known global bank. Then you chose to pursue an MBA and you went to Harvard Business School, which is obviously a lot of competition to get there. How did that experience shape the way that you make decisions, both as an entrepreneur and a leader?
Again, another easy question. I'll tell you, I think there are three things that were really, really life-changing for me. The way we learn a lot in Brazil, the way I learned, and I'm talking about 20, 25 years ago, you were taught a certain material. Somebody that knew more than you did went on the blackboard and explained to you how the world works. When I look at Harvard and I saw how they taught through the case study, there's not really a right answer. It's so ambiguous what the right path is, and you need to start the world is not black or white. The world, if anything, is a lot of gray. So how do you navigate ambiguity? This is probably for me one of the hardest lessons and most important lessons for life, is how do you develop confidence in ambiguity? This case method forces you to make decisions and have real conversations with 80 classmates who are really smart and have great and different experiences, and you have to argue your point. It might be right, it might be wrong. The whole point is teaching you how to think. that for me, I think was the biggest change. It wasn't teaching me what to think. It was teaching me how to think. I could even be wrong and admit at the end I was wrong, but it could be the what, but never the how. So that I think this confidence in ambiguity was the really, really important thing. The second I already mentioned, you can't wait for the perfect answer. You have to learn from a hypothesis, you got to act, and you got to iterate and change as you go. I always say, and this will go, to my pivot to entrepreneurship, if you keep waiting for the right answer, you're never going to do anything. If you're going to wait for your business plan to be perfect, you're never going to start. The perfect really is the enemy of the very good and the good enough. The important thing is, again, go back to your career and build the skills, analytical skills and skills that help you think and get somewhere, irrespective of what your career is. And keep building those skills. And that for me comes absolutely before everything else. And the third thing about Harvard, it really pushes you, again, very different from Brazil, and I think it's America in general, pushes you to think in decades, not in years or months. Where do you want this company to be in 10 years? What do you want your goals or your dreams? Where do you want to take them 10 years from now, 20 years from now? So you start iterating from a very far future, and you learn about your leadership style. How do you lead people? Your values, the impact you want to have. It gave me time. It's 2 years. It gave me time to think about all those things. Who do I want to work with? Who do I want to spend the majority of my time with? Who I want to be doing with? What do I want to be doing? So I think these three things, which is all about, at the end of the day, learning to lead and to live with imperfection. It was probably my biggest lesson. And again, the network, right? You carry with yourself for the rest of your life, your classmates, previous classmates, future classmates, that form a community that is really helpful for your future.
Great. And then you went on and you did another, pivot or a challenging thing, which is moving to entrepreneurship. And a lot of people, right, Harvard, especially Harvard Business School, is this globally known, sought after brand. You had already worked at, one of the top global investment banks. Striking out on your own and being an entrepreneur is a significant risk that a lot of people think about, especially in business school, but not as many people do it as think about it. So could you talk a little bit about establishing Melissa as a recognized brand in the US and what was going through your mind as you were trying to decide, striking out as an entrepreneur?
Oof. Okay, so I think it goes back to what I said in the beginning. I'm going to die curious. For me, it's like, what if I did this? And I think the what if has to be followed by a plan, right? So it's like, what if I did this and what's the plan? And plans can start really small. For me, the realization was I look at my bosses, and as lovely as they could be, I do not want to be them 10 years from now, 15 years from now. So you're working somewhere and you see your boss and your boss's boss, and it's like, do I want that for me? Forget the person, just the job, their lifestyle, what they do in their values, their leadership. Do I want that for me in 10, 15, 20 years? And my answer was no. So that for me became very clear that that was not the path I was going to follow. So I start becoming curious again. I'm always say that one of my strengths, and I encourage people to practice this, is pattern recognition. You see one thing, you see the second thing, therefore you can figure out the third thing, or what those two things are going to be together. So for me, Melissa it was 2008. The world was starting to get into a recession. People were starting to talk about sustainability, and people are not spending money. And I know one thing women love is shoes. I work in finance, so all the female finance women love to spend a lot of money in shoes. It's not something I do, but I see it all over me. So it's putting things together. Women love shoes. The world is not doing so well. People are not spending money and they care about sustainability. So Melissa came to mind, and I said, I wonder what they're doing outside Brazil. So again, the network. It was actually a Harvard contact that got me in touch with them in Brazil. I presented a plan to them. They had an office in the US, a corporate office in Orlando for 7 or 8 years before I showed up, but they couldn't make it work. So I said, give me a chance, and this is my plan and this is what I wanted to do. I didn't want to advise companies anymore. I didn't want to be a banker anymore. I wanted to operate. I want to be responsible for the outcome, not just the model. I didn't want to put on a spreadsheet and pass it on. I wanted to do it. My curiosity wanted to take me there. So I started really small. I bought a few pairs of shoes and tested in a few boutiques. I didn't bet the house in the beginning. And I tested ideas very, very quickly. And I'm sure we're going to hear from Alberto. You got to be pivoting and iterating and changing things fast. They say, make a lot of mistakes, but make them small and make them quick. And I made a lot of small mistakes, but I made them all very, very quick. And I kept reinvesting every dollar that we made in the business back in the business. So I never raised money for it. So everything was really the fruit of our labor to get that going. You start learning, again, curious. I joined a incubator in New York that only focused on retail technologies because I would look at the business and I was curious again, why does it work this way? And people will tell me, oh, because that's the way you do it. And I was like, why? And nobody had an answer. It's just because that's the way people do it. So I started looking for technologies that could help me be more efficient, be more profitable, serve my customer better. So I started getting into retail tech, which is my second passion. And you just keep going, asking the next question, how can I improve distribution? How can I improve margins? How can I get more customers? How can I elevate the product? And you just keep iterating. You're not going to get everything right. But the fact that I was doing it, I was operating, gave me so much joy. And people have this misconception that entrepreneurship is this grand plan. It is not. For me, it was just a door that I walked through because I was curious. And the challenge felt meaningful to me. It's something I wanted to do. It's something I wanted to do. I believe in the product. I believe in the benefits of the product. I believe in in what they're selling and what they want this brand to be. So I just walked through it. I didn't think too much about, oh my God, I'm an entrepreneur. No, it was just another door that I opened. And before I could think twice, I was already in the middle of it.
Interesting. Thanks so much. So I'm going to put together a couple of questions that I have for you into one. And at this stage of your career, you've been a founder, you're a board member, you're a mentor to a lot of people. How do you evaluate which opportunities are worth your time and your attention now? And then the complement is, space. You started in Brazil, you moved to the US and were in the Boston area for your MBA. Then you moved to New York. You've been there for a good amount of time, but your career has gone back and forth to Brazil, and you are international beyond that. So how do you evaluate how to use your time in general? And then what's
Mhm.
that pull of, being in different places, and like you can't be in two places at once, but you've been back and forth. How do you think about those things?
So first question first, how I spend my time. And for me, it boils down to three things, and the three things are the same thing: people, people, and people. People first. I like working with people that are curious, people that I admire, and people I want to spend time with. Now I can choose who I want to spend time with. And even if you give me the craziest idea, if you really believe in it and you believe in the problem you're solving, you're doing this with integrity and all the right reasons, then you're self-aware. This might be crazy, but I'm going to try this. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to go here. I'm okay with that because some people think you got to come to me. This is it. It's solid. It's never going to change. It's the best idea in the world. That's not whom I choose to work with. As somebody that has grit and resilience, that doesn't matter what comes their way, they just keep going. So that for me, it's people first. Second, I look for places where I can add unfair value, where what I know it's going to give you an edge that nobody else does, where my experience can really change the trajectory, not just marginally improve it. So say you come into the US and you want to sell skinny jeans. I want to be able to tell you nobody in America wears skinny jeans. Let's do baggy jeans. So insights like that, and of course, a lot more sophisticated than this one's, forgive me, but something like that is really going to change the trajectory. For example, when I launched Melissa, I increased the price 3 times from what it is in Brazil. Why? Because I wanted to make the product aspirational. I want to be an object of desire. If I can come with things like that to whom I'm working with, that I can, and then it changed our business because it became aspirational because it was expensive, right? So it's like things like that when I can add that unfair value and energy. Some people I work with and some initiatives or business or whatever, they give me energy. If they suck my energy, don't want to be involved at all. And the last one, the financial logic, and the personal meaning have to match. Both must be present. One, it's not enough on its own. If it doesn't meet that criteria, then I politely say no. And a lot of the people I'm working with are Brazilian entrepreneurs. Brazil always pulls me back. You can take the girl out of Brazil, but you can't take Brazil out of the girl. I will be Brazilian forever. Doesn't matter how long I live outside Brazil. And I said this at an event the other day. Brazilian entrepreneurs for me are world class and a class above most entrepreneurs I know. What we have to go through in Brazil to be a successful entrepreneur, very few people in the world have the resilience, have that grit, have that patience, have the expertise to succeed in spite of everything. To do business in America and the US is easy. If you think of logistics, if you think of finance, if you think of organization, hiring and firing, it's easy. Brazilian entrepreneurs are the ones that really, really have it hard. So that resilience and grit that I told you is so important to me always pulls me back. Like my favorite entrepreneurs happen to be all Brazilians with a few exceptions, right? And what pulls me back is I want to build that bridge. I always say there should be more global Brazilian companies, not the names we know. I don't want new ones, that can start small and grow and be successful here. I seem to have found a way to help with that transition to success in the US. So I want to be that bridge and help more and more companies be successful here. And I don't feel I never left Brazil. I just expanded the surface area, that I could operate. There's just like I just expanded the map a little. I just stretched the map a little bit, but it's hard. I decided to leave. I had this desire to leave, but I also decided to leave because it's hard. It's super hard. I admire the ones who stay and get it done.
Maravilha, Michele, perfeito. Então, eu acho que assim, eu vou pegar esse gancho aí que a Michele acabou de colocar em
Very good,
relação
Michelle. I'll follow what you just said on how you decided to start a new venture, how important it is to work with people, and how difficult it is. I think that before asking the first question to Alberto, it's important to think why we are talking in English and Portuguese in this event when everybody speaks Portuguese. Michele said that you need, it's a very important point, you need to go back to ground zero. When you feel that you are really stupid, you don't know nothing, to be an entrepreneur, to put your face out there and try to recover, you have to take risks. And it's important to show that someone with grit and knowledge and all the effort that you have, because sometimes the effort is hidden. So if you do well, it makes it look easy, but it's almost never is easy. I've had the privilege of knowing people a lot more intelligent than me, and it's not easy for them. They do an incredible job, and the work that they do is make it look easy. So go after a dream with no sweat and blood. I mean, it doesn't exist. So Alberto, you studied computational science, computer science in USP. You started entrepreneuring very early on, and you decided profits in Brazil. What gave you the why do you feel that you could be an entrepreneur that early on, because many people decided to postpone. Okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur later on, after this and that. How did that happen in your case? First of all, thank you, Jason, for the invitation. I have to tell you that just the fact that heard what Michelle said, I had so many insights. It's just worth listening to her for being here. This question is very interesting because, in this sense, I feel that I was an outlier because I wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was in high school. My father is an entrepreneur, but not a startup, capital, or anything. He was a regular Brazilian entrepreneur. That when you need to be an entrepreneur to survive, he works with the civil construction, maintenance. And when I started studying, I said, okay, now you can start working. You have to help me. I started working with him. In the beginning, I would do the technical jobs together with him. And then he changed, my school hours changed. So I had to work at different hours. I went to school in the morning and started working in some administrative jobs, sales, cash flow, taxes, organizing products that we want to sell. Basically, I started managing my father's company, even being that early on. My father is Alberto. I'm a junior, and I was talking. The people thought that they were talking to my father, but they was talking to a 14-year-old guy. And I realized that what I want to do was to have my own business, make it happen. But at the same time, I started working in computer. I started learning and playing with computer, learning how to program. As Michelle said, I moved by creativity, and I said, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur with technology. I want to follow this field of technology. Internet is going to be the future of everything, so I'm going to follow this path. And that was my first crossways. What I'm going to do at university? Am I going to study business? Maybe that will be the more natural choice. Or maybe I'll go to technology and learn business in practice. So I decided to follow the second path. And it's always been based on, okay, what are the best places I can be? I'm going to do the best to get there. Where do you have the best computer science class? You have USP, Unicamp, the best two schools. I studied a lot. I came from public school in Brazil, not very good references for going to these universities. And very very early on, I was in the university environment. I met very smart people, and I said, okay, I'm going to follow this path. So the question was what I always wanted since I was in high school. When I started learning technology, that's the second part of the question. At the university, I started managing the computer network at the institute, and then I had the opportunity to work for the University of Harvard, where I met not only entrepreneurs but educational entrepreneurs. So it was a very small experience, but I knew since my first or second year at the university that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. The why I decided to start a new venture so early on. First of all, I had reference from people that helped me to be at this same environment. That unfortunately, people who come from from a background like mine, they don't have this feel of the possibility. They don't have the vision of being able to reach places that I have reached. So I was really lucky because I managed to meet the right people. And something that is very important is opportunity. I was living with my parents. I didn't have kids. I had no other responsibility but studying. I had to work, so I had to help at home. But the opportunity cost was very low for me. So I could take risks. For me, that was the best time to take risks and start a new business. But the right time, a lot better than if I had waited in my career, if I should have to leave a job to take risks and start a new venture. So I think that is the way I answer your question. First, since high school, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, then started to getting to know people, and I realized that the opportunity cost at that time was very low. And throughout my life, this opportunity cost will go up. So that was the right time to start my new venture. Very good. Now, scaling. People keep asking about scaling. Try to scale your business, your dream. You can dream big. It's cost the same as dreaming small, but especially you who founded from scratch your company. So maybe if you could tell us a little bit about the beginning, how how was your leap from 0 to 1? And now Prof has like 50,000 teachers, 500,000 students. You have scale. And tell me how your technical base and your technical knowledge influence or impact the way you think, more specifically to open business and growth with by scaling, or the potential of scaling to grow. So there was a huge influence on me. In computer science, different from other schools in Brazil, at USP, it's focused on theory. Actually, it was one of the criticisms that some students had to the school. They thought that they're going to start learning a specific language to start working right away. But no, the first thing was math, calculus, data structure, very theoretical subjects. There is an interesting saying that the computer is for the computer science, just like a telescope is for astronomy. So I got into a world of abstraction and theory. In this sense, you start understanding problem solving skills and how you can solve abstract problems. How can you use this learning in the real life? So let me give you some simple examples here. When Google started, right in the beginning, when they had the website that you search and you see the site, the way they place their website it's how the site will connect to you. And they used a mechanism called Markov chain. It's probability structure, it's a statistical. And when you put it together with computer science, you can model. It's an example of how pure math and statistics can shape a system to solve large problems. So this theoretical part opens your mind to look at real world problems and model them from theory. I had a professor, he died, but he used to say the following, and that was genius. If in practice theory is something else, one of them is wrong. So I liked this connection between the theoretical part of computer science and the real world, and how to connect those two things. When you do that, we start trying to solve the problem with scalability. As much as you can. And the Prof line started, I mean, it could be a site for 1,000 people, 1 million people, it doesn't matter. Scalability was embedded in the concept of my project. So much so that in the beginning, my fellow partners, founder partners, we wanted to automate everything. Since the beginning, we wanted to have a very low operational overhead, like the platform had to be self-service. We've always had a very small team. And of course, the influence comes from my theoretical part, because bringing together theory and practice is beautiful, in my opinion, and I managed to learn how to deal with that. Great, thank you. Now I have a question. You advance in your career, and it's difficult to talk and share your challenges. I ask for the people that I talk to, you want to know my CV? You want to impress someone, or you want to know the other truth? It's not that your CV is not truth, but it's a different way you see from a professional way of seeing you as a professional who knows what you're talking about. But it's difficult for people to talk about challenges. So I recommend to our audience here, you have to ask about the others' learnings. Michelle talked about learning fast with making small errors. It's always costs less to learn from other people's mistakes, but you need to know the environment. If you ask in an audience, people are quote unquote judging you like now, you're going to get an answer that I hope in some case people might be more open, share their challenges, because you train yourself self-awareness of how can you share your challenges, your failures. I'm going to ask it to Alberto, but it's the type of question that it's good to have. You have to take into account the environment, because the answer that you're going to receive in Brazil, in your neighborhood with your friends, is going to be different if the same person answered the same question at a different environment. This is an open environment. I hope that Alberto can share his pains. I know that's going to be different. So, Alberto, what was the most difficult time in your career as an entrepreneur, and how did you deal with that? How did you manage to overcome this problem? Before answering the question, based on what you said, unfortunately, in Brazil, we have the stigma that failure is wrong. I mean, a company goes under and it's not well seen. But in startup in the US, Michelle can tell you that people who made lots of mistakes, failure many times, but show that they've learned with their mistakes, they are more valued than people who are just starting now. So I wish that the stigma could change. So it's a pleasure to talk about mistakes. In my case, it was very interesting because the greatest difficulty that I found was a couple of things. Something that happened to the company, together with my view about myself, my abilities and set outs, my questions about my abilities. What were that? When you started designing the first lines of code, that was 2012. And then we started in an incubator at USP in 2013. Then we went to an accelerated process in the startup Brazil. We were the first class of this governmental support. And that's when it happened in 2013 to 2014. That's when I left Harvard to focus on my business. In 2014, we managed to grow the company a little bit. At that time, I was the company's CEO. I raised capital, private capital, angel investors, and with an investment fund to continue running my company. At the end of 2014, the other three partners that started with me, they were my colleagues at the university, computer science. They didn't want to be entrepreneur. As I said, that I wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was in high school. I started the university saying that to people. I tried to convince my friends, okay, let's be entrepreneurs. Let's start a new business. I was kind of trying to be a preacher about entrepreneurship. I think that was a mistake because the best partner maybe is not your best friend. And I learned that in a really bad way because it was in the middle of the whole story. They decided to leave, and that was complicated because I had three partners leaving. It was me, three partners and me. So that was a huge impact. How I'm going to replace these people? And the second thing is investors came to me and said, okay, what's going on? Are you going to close? Not? What's going to happen? So I was a very young guy. It was 14 years old. I have questions. Am I good enough? Can I run my business? Should I change? Should I close the business? To overcome all that, I decided to understand what was going on, why I was an entrepreneur at the end of the day. And I realized that well, Nelly, I was not attached to a business model or what the business was or the product. My goal was to be an entrepreneur, solve the problem of for real people, and of course, bring financial returns to whoever is involved in the process. So my commitment was not with a business model, but with people who were around all that. So I started looking, okay, how am I gonna replace these people I missed, that I lost. So then you went through a process of merge with a competitor. So not only we killed, quote unquote, the competition, but we got together. It was a company focused on B2B. We were focused on B2C. And it was really great. My partner, who is still my partner, he's more from the business part. He has an MBA from Wharton, and with that, he focused more on the business side, and I was more focused on technology. And then I, like, well, how can I say, I changed my job, quote unquote. But we continued running the project together. And that was a time that was very difficult to see who Alberta was, who was the company. Uh, you have the ability to do so. Talking to people was crucial. We never have a straight line. When you listen to success stories, those are lines that look straight, but history is not a straight line. And we always hear about the success stories, but we don't hear about failures or learnings throughout the way. So I learned to be resilient. I decided to keep my business going. I decided to be even more committed to the business. Um, of course, you work a lot in one side, you work a lot, and some areas of your life are going to be relegated to a second place. But that's what we did. It's very interesting. I think in life, we need to make decisions. The future and even the present is uncertain. We don't know if you are going to taking the right path. Is that what I should be doing? As Alberto just said, am I competent enough to do that? And you have to decide to go ahead somehow. So it opens some doors and close others. So we invest time, knowledge, deciding to choosing or not choosing, because not choosing is a choice, because you keep doing what you were doing. So my question is, what are the experiences that make you happier when you have an interesting journey? I asked about the pains and regrets, but what are the decisions that you said, okay, I did it right? I thought I make this decision and I'm happy that I made that decision. So if you could reflect on that, that would be great. I think that number one is to be able to see the impact of what you're doing. So in this case, in my case, working with education and with teachers, professors, that unfortunately in Brazil, they're not valued as they should. And listen to the story of these professionals. They're very good. Like listening to people who live from the business. If the business dies, this guy is going to lose their job. Basically, you have many teachers in the same situation. Um, I've heard from, like I'm at the gym, and some says that, okay, I'm a teacher. Do you know the website Prof? And said, oh, yes, of course. I was the one who created it. It's so cool to meet people who use your business and see the impact it had in their lives. So I think that is one of the most rewarding part of the business, regardless of being billionaire or not. I'm not a billionaire, by the way, but that was not the idea. Solving a real problem was my main goal. It's very good, given that that's the main goal, that we can see the result. The financial part comes together. Second thing is the following. Starting a new business is painful. We have a lot of issues regarding that. That's not me saying that. Mental health is very complicated. It demands a lot. And Michelle said, especially in Brazil, because we have lots of challenges. The laws change. I mean, even the past is uncertain in Brazil. The past, not only the present and the future. It's very complicated. But I tend to believe that having an entrepreneur mind, in a sense that you can find problems, solve the problem, and play by the rules, even if the rules change, that's more stable than the mentality, the mindset of having a job and thinking that having a stable job, working at going to having a public position. Not that it's bad, but the stability can actually be stable. But for me, it was the realization that adapting to solve problems and face these problems with my arms open will give more stability, in my point of view, than having a stable job. You see, I think this experience is liberating. Starting a business and realizing I have this ability of playing with life as the problems arise. So thank you, Alberto. Now I want to bring together the two guests. I'm going to follow with a question that came from Susanna from the audience, and a following question that I want to interact. I want you guys to interact because, at least for me, that represents two people, two successful people who, as I said, they did complementary things following different paths. So, Michelle, you can ask a question to Alberto and vice versa. Let's start with a question from the audience. That is, as I said, from Rosanna. So if you're thinking about developing a digital product, like an app, where you think it makes more sense to start? I mean, Alberto mentions the app, and then Michelle can follow. Perfect. I think that entrepreneurs have the same answer as me, but I think it's a universal answer. You have to look at the problem that you are solving, because it's very easy to get into the trap of knowing, okay, I have a great idea for this app. Yeah, it does do this, and it's green, it has this name, and if you click here, it does that, and it's saying that no. Well, it's very easy to get involved with the problem, and it becomes like a fantasy. You don't know who the client is. Why is that relevant? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? To who? And why this person is going to use your solution to solve that problem? And that's the first question that you have to ask yourself. And this question must be asked throughout your life. People change, the market change, the needs change. That's the North Star. Michelle.
I was clapping. You cannot see me on camera, but I was clapping. I was like, what problem are you solving? And who are you really helping by launching this product? I also think people should spend enough time figuring out and answering. Okay, you figure out the problem you're solving, but why you? Why are you the best person with the best idea to solve that problem? Because competition is everywhere. Competition is in Brazil, competition is here. Competition, especially in the digital world, is global. It's not localized anymore. It comes from anywhere in the world. So what do you have that nobody else has, and it will make a difference in the market in solving the problem that you're trying to solve. And I think people don't think enough about it. Sometimes I see digital products that are just 10% better than the competition or 20% cheaper than the competition. That's not enough. You really got to think and figure out why you. I would add that to the soul searching process, because you can develop an app, with AI today in 20 minutes. You don't need to know how to code. So it's a commodity. It's the essence of it that makes it different.
Oh, muito, muito legal. Obrigado. Então, eu falei que eu queria assim uma interatividade,
Great.
mas surgiu
Thank you
uma
that I
outra
wanted some
oportunidade. Eu quero dar
some interaction between the two of you, but there's another question from the audience, and I want to prioritize the audience. I'm going to ask the question in English because Janaína asked the question in English. So Janaína, Roberta Bruno asks the following.
With a technical background in engineering who has never considered entrepreneurship before, how can I begin to develop an entrepreneurial mindset? Então, vou começar desta vez com a Michelle e depois Alberto.
I'm going to start with Michelle, and then I'm going to go over to Alberto.
I am of the opinion that entrepreneurship cannot be taught. It's where you learn by doing. So what I said in one of the first questions, the excellent is the enemy of the very good. So you just got to do it. As I said, it's not this huge mountain that you have to climb. It's this little door that you have to go through. And before you know, you see yourself, on the other side. I don't think entrepreneurs are necessarily born. They can be created. You can learn. And Alberto, I'm interested in your answer because he's a computer scientist and he became an entrepreneur, became a CEO. So I think you're more qualified than I am to answer this one. But my advice is don't be afraid. Take the risks. Do the homework. Do a lot of homework. Homework takes time. The more you take time to prepare, the better prepared you will be. But take the leap. Take a leap of faith. But I want to hear what Alberto thinks.
Esse responde em português agora, imagina.
I'm going to answer in Portuguese, right? Now,
Eu diria que assim, tem
I would say that
duas coisas. A primeira,
there are a couple of things.
concordo com o que a Michelle falou também.
First of all, what Michelle just
Colocando
said,
aqui a minha experiência, é assim,
just
abrir a cabeça no
my
sentido
experience.
que
Open your
sair de um
mind
mundo onde
in a
as
sense that
respostas são
you
exatas,
leave this
e
world
igual a Michelle falou
world
também
where
no
answers are
por exemplo,
heavy.
da
Michelle
Harvard
talked
Business
about
School,
the Harvard
que
Business School
migrar para
case
um mundo
method.
onde
Migrate
as
to a
respostas não são tão
world
claras
where
e
answers are
mesmo
not
assim não existe
that
uma resposta
clear.
certa. Pode
And
ser
even though there's no
múltiplas
right
respostas
answer,
certas.
you can have
Então,
multiple right
jogar nesses
answers.
dois mundos de
So
você
playing in
ter
both worlds,
aquela
like that
coisa
you have
das exatas, da matemática, da
the
engenharia,
math,
talvez da computação,
the
e navegar
computer
mundo de
science,
incerteza,
engineering, and navigate
marketing,
a world
de
of
consumidor,
uncertainty,
de quais são as
marketing,
dores,
consumer, what are
de
the
branding, de
pains,
psicologia,
branding,
navegar
psychology,
essas coisas que são mais
navigating
subjetivas, eu
all
acho que
that, the
é importante.
subjective
Então,
part of it is very
se
important as
jogar
well.
nisso,
So
assim, de entrar na área de
just take the
marketing, começar a
leap,
entender essas
get into
coisas,
marketing, start
estudar
understanding
psicologia. Eu tive
all
uma
that.
sorte de
Study
estudar muito
psychology.
psicologia
I
porque eu
was
sou
really
mágico
lucky that I
amador.
studied psychology
Aí eu
because I'm
comecei a
a
aprender
amateur
psicologia e
magician.
depois
So I started
descobri que dava
learning
para usar isso no
psychology.
marketing,
And
entendeu?
then I realized I could
Os
use that
viés
in marketing.
comportamentais e jeitos que as
You
pessoas
have
pensam
some
que você pode
behavior
usar no
bias, the
marketing,
way
entendeu?
people think that you can
Então,
use in
assim,
marketing as
se
well.
jogar nessas
So
áreas vai te ajudar muito a
take the leap
enxergar
in those
os
these
jeitos de
different areas,
resolver
and that will
problemas que não
help
são os
you
jeitos exatos.
to
Eu diria que
solve
essa é
some
uma
problems
coisa.
that are not
A segunda,
exact
que
ways of
talvez
solving
seja meio
problems. The
óbvia, é
second thing that I
fazer.
agree with Michelle is
Mas
that
aí, usando o
do
que o
it.
Jason falou, de que
Now,
o
following what
fazer
Jason
também,
said,
mas fazer
doing,
sem ter
but
ter
doing
um monte
without
de conselhos de outras
um,
pessoas, aí você pode estar
the
perdendo um
advice
pouco de
from some
tempo, porque
people,
você vai
you
estar
can
fazendo
end
melhor do
up
que outras
wasting
pessoas já
time.
fizeram.
You're going to
Então,
be making
assim, se envolver
mistakes
no meio, conhecer
that other
gente,
people had already made.
pedir
So get
conselho e
involved
opinião,
in
vai
this
ajudar muito a
environment.
não cometer os
Ask
mesmos erros e ter visões
advice will
diferentes.
help you
E
not
aí nisso encerro com uma
uh,
frase que eu gosto
um,
muito, que é assim:
to make the
escute
same
muito,
mistakes. And there's a
tome conselhos de
sentence that I
poucos,
like.
mas tome as próprias
Listen
decisões.
a lot, receive, get the advice of just a few, and make your own decision. And I think that's the final question from the audience. And then you're going to close with a comment, maybe Michel to Alberto, or a question, and vice versa. Vice versa. question from Ana Duarte is the following. I think that's very important. I'm going to ask Michele to be the first to talk because he talks about raising capital in the US. And to Alberto, that is an entrepreneur since very young age with his father, without the Silicon Valley, the billions of dollars behind. How can you start raising funds in the Brazilian environment? What's the difference between the two of them? So he's asking how to start or where to start raising funds, but you don't have, how to start if you don't have capital. Michele, with your experience as a banker, as an entrepreneur in New York, and Alberto, your experience in Brazil, and how to escalate, and then afterwards.
I think it starts, when you have an idea, you have to find the people that believe in you because you haven't proven anything. You have zero revenues. You might not have a website. You might not have an app. You might not have a brand. You might not even have a product. So the first people that you're gonna fundraise from, and it's called a friends and family round because you're gonna fundraise from your friends and your family, and those are the people that are gonna give you, that first money. Call it 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, whatever you think it's going to be necessary to get to the next stage where you raise money from. It's a professional category of people called angel investors. Their job is to invest, to give angel money, to be that angel that's going to bless you to get going. You have a little bit of product market fit, you prove your product and your business a little bit, and you move on to the next stage. And I always said, not so much in my first company that I didn't raise money, but on my second company, one thing that I did 100% of the time, doesn't matter where I am or what I'm doing, I'm always recruiting and I'm always fundraising. It's like buying an umbrella. You're not going to find an umbrella to buy when it's raining. You got to buy the umbrella before it rains. So when you're raising money, you need to talk people. It's a dating process. I am an angel investor, and I don't like when people come to me, present me something, but they don't want to know about me. They don't know what I think. They don't know if I'm invested in that sector. They don't know what I can really add. They know my name and my companies. It's a dating process. When you start getting to the angel round, it's really sometimes my first angel, it took me 18 months to get, I think, $50,000 from that person. I had a coffee, I had a lunch, I had a dinner. And in all these events, I didn't ask for anything. I was just telling them what I was doing. I was sharing with them my passion. I was sharing with them what my dreams were, where I want to take this company. So consider like a boyfriend or a girlfriend that you're getting to know, and you don't start asking your boyfriend or your girlfriend the first date or the second date. So I think that's the process. And when you get to that you move on. The next stage on that is what they call the institutional rounds, which are the funds. Then it becomes a much bigger game of networking and who are your angel investors. So somebody say, oh, if Alberto invested in your company, it must be a great company because Alberto is a great guy. So you got to keep building. It's like building blocks to get somewhere. I can keep going. It's a very difficult process, but there's something that resembles a formula to it.
Eu ia dar exatamente a mesma resposta, de que é algo progressivo, né? De que você precisa,
My answer is pretty much the same. It's progressive. You have to do little by little. You don't want to reach your goal immediately. Even if you have a very strong track record, that people is gonna trust you because of you. Otherwise, let's connect to another idea. And what do you have to have on each stage of the process? The MVP, but that's very important because people don't think about that. The minimum viable product. The MVP of a car is not a car without wheels. It's not a car without airbag. The MVP of a car, it's a bicycle that you can build with very little resources that you can, the idea is to take someone from point A to point B. So when you have your bicycle, then you have an electric bike, and then a motorcycle, then a car. not only
pensar no fundraising como algo
think about
de
fundraising
etapas, igual
as
você
something
falou,
that
mas também conseguir
comes
casar
in
isso com
steps, but
que estágio do
manage to
produto de
match
fato você está
that
desenvolvendo. Então,
what
no
helps the
início,
product you are
eu acho que o maior
developing.
objetivo
So
é
in the
conseguir
beginning, the
provar que o
greatest
problema
challenge
existe,
or the greatest
que ele é
goal is to
relevante e que
prove
tem
that
pessoas
the
que
problem exists,
acreditam
that
que
it's
aquela solução
relevant,
resolve o
and you
problema.
have people who
E bancar
believe
esse
that that
estágio
solution
talvez você não
will
precisa ter
solve the
muito dinheiro
problem.
mesmo.
Maybe you
Então,
don't
é
need
até
that much
eu acho
money
que uma
at
coisa
that
que às vezes
stage.
as pessoas pensam
And I
desnecessariamente que elas
think
precisam de
people
muito dinheiro para começar.
think that
E
they
às vezes
need
você
a
nem precisa
lot of
disso.
money to
Tem muitos
start, and
casos em
sometimes
que
you
você só
don't.
precisa de
You have
site de
some
assim,
cases
você
where
mede
you
quantas
just
pessoas
need one
clicaram num
website and
botão
you're
para
going to
você ir
measure
lá.
how
É
many
muito, muito
people
pequeno aquilo.
clicked on
Mas
a
às vezes
certain
isso já é o
button.
suficiente para você
And that is
levantar
enough
um
for
angel
you
investor, por exemplo. Então,
to
assim,
raise money from an
eu acho
angel
que
investor.
casar
I think
que estágio do
matching
seu produto
uh, the
que
step
estágio
that
e
your
quanto de
product
capital você precisa para
is,
aquele
or
estágio.
how much money you
E
need
não
for
já
that
ir direto
step.
para assim, vou levantar 10
Not
milhões
trying
para
to go,
resolver
okay,
meu
I'm going to
negócio.
raise
É
10
muito
million to
difícil fazer
solve
isso.
my idea completely. It's hard
Fantástico. Então,
to
eu quero
reach that point.
fechar, eu
Now,
falei, sempre
fantastic.
dando preferência para a
Now,
plateia.
I'm
Não vou fazer uma
gonna,
pergunta que eu falei que
I'm
não
not gonna
faria, porque
ask any
eu
more
dei essa
questions, but
palavra
I'm
para o
gonna
Gustavo,
uh,
que ele colocou em forma de
do
pergunta,
something
mas eu
different.
vou
Luis
colocar
Gustavo
em
asked the
forma de
question, but
situação,
I'm
que é
gonna switch it.
entender
A
é a
statement
arte de
in
improvisar
the
muitas vezes. Eu adoro aqui
entrepreneurship is the
para
art
fechar.
of improvisation. Now,
Michele, pode assim dar
Michelle,
uma última
can
assim
you tell
comentário,
me,
colocação, às
can
vezes
you
assim
make
você está super
say
honrando porque
something, a
assim
final
pessoas de
comment?
empresa, estudar administração e que essa é a parte
If you're
técnica ou
a
vice-versa.
business
Então
owner
a
studying
última colocação,
business
a
or
minha
studying the
um
technical part,
grande
my
agradecimento
final
para os nossos
comment
dois
is
convidados, grandes
thank you so much
amigos
to my
e brilhantes
guests
profissionais
here,
e
great
para a
friends,
plateia
brilliant
agradecer assim a
professionals, and
participação e
for
presença
the
neste evento
audience,
do ano,
thank you for your
desejando um
participation
ótimo final de
throughout
2025
the
e início de
year
2026.
in our
A
Talking
última
Business event,
palavra
and have
será
a great
da
end of
Michele, depois do Alberto e depois do
2025
Fer.
and great beginning of
Wow.
2026. So Michelle, Alberto, and then we
No
close.
pressure. No pressure. I have to say, being an entrepreneur, and it's my second career, not my first, has been the most fulfilling experience of my life. I feel that I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about people. I learned so much about the world. And it's one of those things you do that you never stop learning. Never. Every day there's something new. When I think I know enough, I'm humbled. I got a humble pie and said, girl, no, keep going. So it has to be one of the most rewarding and fulfilling experiences, at least in my view, a human being can have. And I would not trade it, as hard as it is, I would not trade it for the world.
Eu diria que assim, na questão do improviso,
I would say that
sim, eu diria
improvisation.
que
Okay,
tem que saber improvisar muito
improvise.
bem,
You
mas
need to know
com
how to improvise,
conhecimento, né?
but with knowledge.
E que o
And
improviso é assim, quando a mesma situação se
this,
apresentar, você tem que
the
dar toda a sua
improvisation, when you have the
bagagem
same
naquela
situation, you
coisa
need
então,
to have baggage. You need to have
né?
this tool
Mas eu
in
diria
your
também,
toolbox.
usando quase uma
But
coisa meio
following the
filosófica, como a
same
Michelle falou, de que assim,
philosophy that Michelle just
empreendedorismo
said,
para mim sempre
entrepreneurship for
foi
me
relacionado com qual que é o meu
is
propósito de
related
vida. E
with
ainda acho que
my
sempre achei que o meu
life
propósito de
purpose.
vida
I
era
always
ajudar as
always
pessoas.
thought that my
E, de
life purpose
certa
was to
forma,
help
eu
people.
consigo viver
Somehow
muito bem dentro
I
do
can do that
empreendedorismo. Mas
through
depois desse
entrepreneurship.
movimento, eu descobri
But
que, na
later
verdade,
on,
a
more
coisa que eu
recently, I
mais amo na
realized that
vida é
what I
aprender.
love the
E
most is to
aí,
learn.
com certeza, assim como o Michele falou, também
And
é uma
of
coisa
course,
que
for sure, this is
empreendendo,
something that, of course,
talvez é
being
por isso
an
que eu estou empreendendo,
entrepreneur,
porque assim,
maybe that's
é um
why
prazer
I'm still
imenso,
an entrepreneur, because
viver
it's a
todo dia
great
com pessoas
pleasure to
novas, pessoas
learn
que me
with new
inspiram, que
people,
vão sempre me
people who
ensinando
inspire
novos
me.
caminhos, ou mesmo que não seja uma resposta que eu
Um,
vou
Even if
executar exatamente aquela
there's
coisa,
not
mas também
the
vai servir
answer that I'm gonna
como uma
take, but
força
it's
para me
gonna
encontrar meu próprio
be
caminho. Então,
a
eu
strength
diria
for
que
me to find my
empreendedorismo
own
é
way.
quase
So
um
I think the
jeito de viver,
entrepreneurship
assim,
is
além
a
do que exatamente você está
way of
fazendo.
life. I don't know. It goes beyond
Então,
what
com
you are
isso, a
doing.
gente encerra o evento. Eu, mais uma
And
vez,
with
eu quero
that, I'm going to close
agradecer
the
a
event.
Michelle e o
Thank you
Alberto por
so much, Michelle and
compartilhar
Alberto, for
sua
sharing with
bagagem, seu
us
conhecimento com a
your
gente
baggage, your
e a
knowledge,
plateia por estar com a gente. A
and
gente se
the
vê
audience
em
for having been with
2026.
us. And
Muito obrigado,
see
boa
you
noite.
soon in
Obrigado,
2026.
obrigado.
Good evening.